Hey, I'm Julie. You already know why you over-prepare. You could write an essay on where you people please, and you can still say yes when you mean no. Well, this episode gives you something different, a 5-minute practice that works on the part of your brain where those patterns actually live. And by the end, you'll know exactly what to do tomorrow morning and why it works. Hey, I'm Julie and welcome to the Upgrade Show. As you know, we are here every Wednesday at 11:30. You can catch all of the recordings, all the live on YouTube, Middleside Therapy and Coaching. Please jump on there, go and subscribe, like, share with your friends, because the more people that can get to see the show, the more people I can help. So if you're watching this live, please join me with any comments. If you're watching on replay, put hashtag replay. And again, please put any comments and I will do my best to come back to you as soon as I can. So what are we doing today? So I'm actually going to give you some a real tool that's going to take you about 5 minutes every day to do. Well, you don't have to do it every day, but it's something you could do every day, something really, really practical. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about why this works and something that you can really, really get your teeth into, I think. Every show I try to give you something, but this week we're going to take 5 minutes to actually go through it together. All right. So I hope you enjoy it. And as I say, please, let me know in the comments as we go along. So perhaps you understand yourself better than most people. Okay. Now, many of the people I meet, they've done a lot of work and they can trace back some of their patterns from things in the past, right? But it could also be that you haven't done any of that and you haven't got a clue, but that's okay as well. But what we want to do in this show is to bring awareness, okay? Now, for me, when I worked in the corporate world, which was for over 35 years in the end, like many people, I just thought being stressed was normal. That's just what happened, right? You're juggling work, you're juggling work, you're juggling family life and a lot of responsibilities, right? So I wasn't walking around thinking, oh, Julie, you're heading for burnout. I was just getting through the day, getting through the week, getting through the month, getting through the year, right? What was my next deadline? What thing did I need to organize next? Which thing could I tick off my list? But actually, looking back, there were patterns there, and actually they were quite clear. But at the time, I couldn't see the water that I was even swimming in, okay? And I'm sure that's the same for many of you, because it's about bringing that awareness, okay? And that's why this really matters. And I really, really wish that I knew this stuff back then, because I know I would have led a completely different life, and even in my life right now, I've got a lot going on, okay? But the only way I'm able to juggle that and be as stress-free as I can is by using all the tools and techniques that I teach my clients. And, I'm trying to show you some of those with each show. But without those, I'm not really sure what state I'll be in right now, okay? So when we don't have the awareness, we're always going to go into those meetings or in those things in life, really, where potentially we feel that freeze moment, when our brain just stops and we don't really know what to say because it's all in what I say, it's in a mucking fuddle. I have to be careful how I say that. You might still wake up at 2 a.m. with everything replaying in your mind. And then you might still find yourself saying yes to things that you really, really wanted to say no to, because we've all got that in us, right? Or most of us have. Now, there is a gap between what you know about yourself and what you can actually do about it. And that's the frustration, all right? So why doesn't insight on its own change anything, right? So we can know this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily make a difference, right? Well, that's called neuroscience. And this is the kind of thing that I want to just briefly share with you today. So here's what I learned after years of doing this work now, right? And I realized that the reason nothing changed before was because I wasn't doing the deep work and really understanding what was going on. You don't really understand why you can be in a meeting and get so flustered and so frustrated or even get upset there were times when I would cry and I'm like, oh, God, you're so embarrassing. Why are you crying? Like, I don't know. But there was obviously some sort of trigger, and when you've been even a meeting with your boss, say, and you just didn't say what you wanted to say and you get so annoyed with yourself, because something stopped you from doing that. Now, that's all part of your identity, as we've talked about before, okay? So this 5-minute practice, you could start tomorrow, right? Well, you can do it with me today while you're listening to this, but you could start giving this little intro into your life that could actually make a huge difference. And I'm going to explain to you why it works first, because I know many of you are analytical and you like to know how these things work, right? Now, the great thing about all this neuroscience and neuroplasticity now is with all scans and technology, we can actually prove this stuff. Because a lot of people are not happy just trusting, right? So now we can actually prove a lot of this stuff. Now, one of the first things I learned when I was doing all this new trainings, particularly with my rapid transformational therapy training, NLP and all that kind of stuff, is the biggest thing we understand now about our brains is we learn by repetition. So what's that mean? Well, the more we do something, the more we embody something, right? So that's great if it's a positive habit or something that really gives us value. But the downside of that, of course, is that happens for all our negative habits and negative things as well, right? So most of us are living inside what I call the identity box, right? We know it was built years ago based on beliefs. Maybe, you're always been the responsible one, the achiever, the one who keeps everyone happy. But every day, without realizing it, you're gathering more and more evidence that supports that belief, right? So in other words, a belief is something that we just believe, right? But we can also reverse that and choose to not believe that. But when we believe, like, for example, I'm not good enough, and we've believed that maybe since we were 1 or even younger than that, maybe if you're 40, 50 now, say, for example, that's a long time to have a belief embedded in your subconscious mind. Whereas if you want to change that belief, it's going to take a lot of repetition to change that belief, but you can actually do it, because that's the beauty of neuroplasticity, right? You can actually change how your brain reacts and how your body reacts to things, right? And you can actually regrow brains as well, in the sense that, sometimes dead brain can actually regrow. So back in the day, they said your mind was set, but that's not true now, because through neuroplasticity, it's not an easy word, that one, right? You can rewire your brain. And that's why what I do is so powerful, because we can remove the old rooted beliefs and replace them with new powerful beliefs. And when you work with me on a one-to-one basis, you get a bespoke recording every time we do a deep dive session. So what that does, then you have to listen to that recording for at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5, the longer the better, because your brain will take that on board. So if your belief was, I'm not good enough, we're going to remove the physical reactions around that. But through the recording, you're going to hear every day that you're amazing, you're brilliant, and your brain will just go, okay, I'm confident now then. All right. So you can reprogram your brain. That's the key point here. All right. We can change beliefs, but you can't change them overnight, because it will just automatically drag you back to the belief that you've been holding on for however long you've been holding on to it, right? And then the more life goes on, you just give it more evidence, right? So your brain doesn't change because you understand something once. It changes when you give it repeated proof of a different version of you. Now, I'm going to share with you, hopefully, this. So what we're seeing here is like an old identity box here and a new identity. But this is like your board, if you want, your pin board, however you want to see it. Okay. So if you think of this as like an evidence board, so your brain is collecting evidence all day long. So every time you stay quiet in a meeting, pins another little bit of evidence on your board. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, another bit of evidence goes on that board. And every time you over prepare because you're worried, you might be worried because, oh my God, I'm going to get it wrong. It's another piece of evidence that goes on your board. See what happens on this little picture here. Before long, you've built a mountain of proof that says, this is who I am. And then we wonder why the identity feels so real. Does that make sense? Yeah. However, the good news is this can all be reversed. So every time, for example, that you start speaking up, every time maybe you set a new boundary, every time you trust yourself, every time you choose courage over comfort, you're pinning new evidence to a different board, to a new identity. All right. And it's about collecting enough evidence for the person you're becoming. And when something actually comes up and a belief appears, what you have to ask yourself is, what evidence is there to suggest this? And then you can counter that belief by finding some new positive evidence. Or go, well, I know I didn't speak up just then, but do you know what? Last Wednesday when I spoke up then, right? So that's evidence. So it's about going and finding the positive evidence to actually contradict that belief. And the more times that you can contradict that belief, the more that belief's going to go away, right? Because that is neuroplasticity in plain English. Your brain believes what you show it more often. Yeah, does that make sense? So every time you stay quiet, your brain says, see, that's who you are. Every time you over prepare, your brain says, see, you need all that preparation to stay safe. Is this landing? So every action becomes evidence. Now the question is, what are you proving to your brain every day? So the question becomes, how do you give your brain different evidence, aka new positive evidence? Now the answer is repetition at the right level. The part of your brain running these patterns, the automatic reactions that kick in before you've had time to think. Now that part doesn't speak the language of insight, it speaks the language of evidence. Let me just take this off. I really hope this is making sense. If it isn't, then let me know with any questions that you've got. So if you think of it like learning to ride a bike, right? Now you could spend weeks, months, whatever, studying the physics of the bike, how all the mechanics work, how the balance works, how all the pedals work, the gears, right? And you could understand every single thing about that bicycle. But until you get on that bike and actually practice it, nothing's really going to change, is it? You can have a bit of an idea, but you really need to get on and actually do it. You know, swimming might be another example, any sport really, or anything really. But as soon as you start doing it, the more you do it, the more your brain will get used to it. And that's the same with confidence. It works in the same way. Once you're understanding a pattern that isn't the same as creating a new experience, right? You need to create a new experience repeatedly. Now, until your brain has enough evidence to update it, it's going to struggle. So, yeah, is this making sense, right? The more you do it, your brain learns by repetition. That's the main thing. When we tie our shoelaces as a kid, that's repetition. We learn how to do it, how to clean our teeth. We learn by repetition, right? The more we do it, the easier it becomes. All right. So let me know in the chat, what does your identity box say about you? Are you the responsible one? Are you the achiever? All right. Just have a think of what role do you think you're playing? What beliefs are behind that? So as I said at the beginning, I'm going to show you a 5-minute morning rewire process that you can do. So I'm just going to very quickly talk you through it, just to give you an idea of what we're going to do, and then I'll go through it properly. Now, if you're watching this live, try and follow it through with me. But if you do get a bit lost, just go back and watch the replay. Obviously, if you're watching it on replay, you can stop it and go back, whatever you want to do. But what we're going to do is effectively we're just going to we are going to close your eyes. We're going to do a little bit of breathing. All right. And then you're going to start to bring to mind a version of you. Who do you want to operate differently with? What does that person? So if I use myself as an example, I'll be going, okay, I'm going to do a live show. How do I want to come across? Well, I want to come across confident. I want to come across that I know my stuff. Or maybe it's an event, something like that, right? A day event, which I do quite often. I have to go through the whole process. I've done my preparation. I walk myself through it sort of practically, but also I do it in my head as well. I visualize myself standing in front of them. I visualize what I'm wearing. I visualize how I'm feeling and how confident I'm looking, because your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined, right? So when you do visualization, you put positive images in front of it. That's what it starts to believe, right? That's the version of you. So in this little process, we're going to close your eyes. We're going to do some deep breathing, and then you've got to think of the version of the person that you want to be. And then you're going to step into that version. So you're going to, what do they feel like? What do they look like? And see yourself physically doing it. And then you're going to choose a specific scenario that maybe is coming up soon this week or something. Maybe it's a meeting, a conversation. And then you're going to step into that version of you that you want to be, and then you're going to anchor it. All right. So that's what we're going to do at a high level. So what I want to do now is to do this a bit more slowly, but we're going to do it properly. We're going to go through the motions. All right. So let's just get yourself nice and comfortable. Hopefully you're sitting down already. And I just want you to just close your eyes just for a moment. Obviously, only if it's safe to do so. If you're driving or anything like that, by the way, please don't do this. But only if you're in a time where you're not doing anything and it's not going to be dangerous for you to close your eyes, okay? And if you can't do it now, just do it whenever you can. So yeah, just gently close your eyes, and I'm going to invite you to just do some breathing. Now, I work with coherent breathing, which is 6-6 breathing, which is in for the nose and out for your nose for the count of 6. But if 6 feels a little bit too much, then just do 4 and gradually build up to it. Okay. So let's breathe in. So remember, all through your nose. So in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I want you to continue to breathe in for the count of 6 and out for the count of 6 as you listen to my voice. Okay, just focus on your breathing. So what I want you to do now is to think about the version of you that you want to become in this particular situation. So the version that operates differently to the one of you currently, okay? Now, I don't want this to be a fantasy version. I just want you to see you, the version of you who walks into that meeting maybe without feeling that tightness in their chest. Maybe that person that doesn't overthink everything all the time. Maybe it's that person who's got clarity and focus, who doesn't need to over prepare to feel really safe. Okay, just see them. How do they stand? How do they speak? How do they respond when they're challenged? Okay. Now, step 2, I want you now to imagine that you're stepping into that version of you. So what does it feel like in your body to be them? Right? How grounded do you feel? How steady on your feet do you feel? Are your shoulders back? Do you have that air of confidence? Maybe you're smiling. Maybe you look and feel amazing. All right? This isn't visualization for motivation. You're giving your brain a felt experience of being someone different. Yeah? This isn't about just standing in front of the mirror telling yourself amazing. This is about creating a felt experience that your nervous system can recognize as safe. So what do you look and feel like? All right? Remember, you're giving your brain a felt experience of being someone different. Now, step 3, we're going to run through a specific scenario. So pick something up maybe that may be happening this weekend. Perhaps it's a meeting, perhaps it's a conversation, a moment where you'd usually shrink into yourself or over-prepare. Now remember, this doesn't always have to be work. This can be personal life too. What awkward conversations might you need to have this week? Okay, and I want you to see yourself moving through this as this version of you. Not perfectly, just differently. All right? Just run that specific scenario. Well done. And the final step, step 4, is you're going to anchor it. So before you open your eyes, notice one physical sensation that comes with being that version of you. All right? Maybe your shoulders have dropped. Maybe your chest feels calm, your breathing feels calm. You feel sturdy on your feet. Now that's your anchor. And you can come back to it during the day. Now it might be that you want to maybe press your thumb and forefinger together and anchor that in. You might want to just hold your hands together. It could be anything, it could be an anchor. It can just be a feeling of calmness is your anchor. All right? And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Well done. How did that feel? And like I said, watch this again and again and again. Listen to it. And let me know how you get on. So, why does this work? Well, as we said, your brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Everything's the same, right? It's the same neuro pathway. Now, you're not thinking about change, you're practicing being changed, all right? So 5 minutes of this repeatedly daily, you can start to build a new evidence base and your brain begins to update who it thinks you are. Now, if we was going to put that into some scenarios, right? If we do the meeting that you maybe, I don't know, over-prepare for, usually you might spend 2 hours the night before going over every possible question. You walk in tight and you perform. But with this practice, maybe that particular morning you've already run that meeting through your visualization process, right? And you've seen yourself do it. And now you trust yourself, right? Because you know you can do it. You felt what it's like to respond without that script playing over and over again, okay? So what changes is you still prepare, but you prepare less, right? You walk in with something different in your body, that air of confidence, because now you're not performing. You're just there doing what you do, what you know, what you're good at. Now, if we look at a scenario 2, maybe this is the difficult conversation that you might normally stay quiet in, right? Usually you have something to say, but you just keep waiting for that moment, but it never comes. The moment passes and then you're gutted because you didn't say anything and you keep replaying that over and over again, right? We've all done it. But with this practice, you've already experienced yourself speaking up. Your brain has evidence it's possible. All right. So what changes? The gap between thinking it and saying it gets smaller. Not because you forced yourself, because you've practiced being someone who speaks up. That becomes your repetition, that evidence, the belief that you are the one that can speak their mind. And the more you do it, the more you're building your evidence and more evidence is going on your wall. More positive evidence, not negative evidence. All right? Does that make sense? So let's have a look in the chat then. Who is actually going to do this tomorrow? All right? Let me know. Let me know how it goes. Now, this practice is small. It's only 5 minutes. But what you're doing is teaching your brain who you're becoming. All right? So you're not gathering more evidence for the old identity box. You're building a new one. Actually, I think I've got a nice little image for that. Hang on. Hold the line, caller. Hold the line. Look, you don't want any more evidence for the old box. You want this new evidence. You know, you are enough. You do trust yourself. You can speak your mind, right? So it is about upgrading that box and changing the relationship with that box, all right? Being that new identity. Now, if you want to fast forward that and do that really quickly, that's when you come and work with me on a one-to-one. But if you're happy to, you know, do these small changes to make those positive changes, that's absolutely brilliant too. Okay. So where was I? I do like my little pictures. Right. There is something I need to share with you though, because as I mentioned earlier, that your mind is used to what it's used to, right? So making a change today, doing it once, is not going to make it happen all the time because it hasn't learned by repetition. And then we have the thing what I like to call that, like the snapback effect. All right. So this is where you do the practice, you do feel different. Then later that day, you find yourself overthinking, people pleasing, or doubting yourself again, right? Now, it's important to understand it doesn't mean that this isn't working. It just means that the old identity is still doing exactly what it was designed to do. All right. So your brain is biased towards pathways it's traveled thousands of times, right? Because it's safe and it's comfortable. The outcome might not be safe and comfortable, but the neuro pathway thinks that, right? So when that happens, don't fight it. Just notice it and take your anchor breath. Or if you've chosen another anchor, just to remember that feeling that you had doing that exercise. Drop your shoulders, reconnect to the version of you that you rehearsed that morning, for example. That's a rewire. All right, stopping yourself in your tracks and changing that neuro pathway. So your action for this week, right? If you're up for it, start tomorrow morning. So before you check your phone, before you do your 5 minute of anything else, do your 5 minute morning rewire. Do it at least once. Pick one thing coming up this week and run it as the version of you that you want to operate like, the one that you want to become, the new identity you want to be. All right. And your brain will try to talk you out of it because that's the old box doing its job. Just remember that. But your new box is ready. So what I want you to think about is a particular situation and go, well, hang on, what would the old version of me do? Well, they probably wouldn't speak out. Well, okay, from today, I've got this new version of me. What will they do? Well, actually, they've already gone through this process and they've seen themselves do it and they feel confident that they know what to say and they'll just say it when they need to. All right. So what version do you want? So if you spent years gathering evidence for an identity that's too small for where you're going, you know, you might understand it, you can see it, and there's a gap between understanding something and being able to do something about it. If you want to actually start switching off tonight instead of lying there with your brain still running through tomorrow's meeting, I've made something for you. It's called the Evening Upgrade, and it's a free audio. It's 10 minutes that helps you to stop rehearsing and start resting. All right, now you'll find a link somewhere here in the description, but it'll be with all the information anyway. All right. So what are you going to do to start changing your identity? So remember this 5 minute morning rewire. You're going to see the version of who you operate differently as. You're going to step into them. You're going to feel it in your body. And you're going to run a specific scenario as them. Then anchor one physical sensation. All right. Your brain believes what you show it most of. Remember that. And also remember, insight doesn't change identity. Repetition does. All right. Got it? Now, just before I go, I just want you to, when you're visualizing, some people see, you know, really vivid scenes like you're watching a movie or something like that. Others don't. I don't see, you know, you might see black and white, you might see technicolor, you might not actually see anything, but you will feel it. All right. So don't worry if you can't visualize such great detail. There's nothing wrong with that at all. All right. just a sense of it should be enough. So focus on the feeling in your body more than the picture. All right. And the best time to do it is in the morning. So it gives you that great start. And, you know, if you do it religiously, within about a week, you should start seeing some changes. All right. So just be consistent if you want to make some changes. All right. So that's it. That's me done. And I've been Julie. I hope you've enjoyed this show. And as you know, I'm here every week, Wednesdays at 11:30. And please go to YouTube, subscribe and like and share Millicide Therapy and Coaching. And I hope you enjoy this practice. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the next show. Have a great week. See you soon.